you know, Lily is one of those people, that you meet and she just has to be in your life forever. And we have connected, and I feel like Lily is more of a sister than anything else. So thank you, Lily, for our friendship that is blossoming. So I was born and grew up in Nigeria, and I live in the United States in Minnesota. Right now, I'm calling in from a hotel in Albany, New York, because I have an offsite, with a client. It's my first offsite since COVID started. So I'm kind of excited, but also nervous because we all have to be vaccinated, boosted, and before the program starts, there will be rapid testing going on, and we'll be doing the workshop with masks on. So that's the nature of it. Yes, I said I was born in Nigeria. If you know something about Nigeria, like the intersections begin to emerge because there are over 250 very distinct tribes that have their languages, and there are as many as 300 additional dialects spoken in Nigeria. That was my orientation. And I am married, and my wife is German. And so that's part of my world and reality. 7 years ago, I was kind of like one or two of you expressed in your introduction, a lifelong learner. So I'm like, okay, I have a PhD, but I'm intrigued by this other program. So I signed up for a master's program. That program changed my life. It was in the context of that program in Portland that I discovered that I had been going through life wearing multiple layers of masks, arising from things that I later on discovered had to do with colonization, internalized oppression, intergenerational traumatic issues that I was kind of like dealing with. That process took me 3 years, to unfold and peel off and keep peeling off until I felt like I finally, for the first time in my life, rediscovered me and came home to me. And I haven't let myself go since then. I haven't. And it's actually daily work to keep owning that. And I say that in the midst of systems that are constantly like competing to keep putting new masks on me, to keep putting me in different kinds of boxes, to keep limiting my potential, and my freedom, to keep invading my own personal boundaries. So what I want to do today is actually just share thoughts and ideas like that and provoke some reflection in the hopes that by the time each one of us leaves, maybe, and I'm using maybe, because at one time in my life, I was a pastor. Still I'm ordained, but that's not the context of my work. And what I would say was that every time I stepped up on the pulpit to preach, that I was preaching to just one human being. I wasn't preaching to everybody. If one person left feeling like they had something to work with, that had them looking at their lives and who they are in the world and how to bring their best selves to the world, my work was done. So I'm hoping that one of you, just one, if it is two, that would be awesome. If it is everyone, that would be just incredibly amazing, But I'm hoping that there will be something that expands your space beyond what it was when you came, or have you, actually going the other way, inward, to discover maybe there are still some masks and some things in your life that are running your life and running your work in some ways, directly or indirectly, whatever that is. So I'm going to pull the PowerPoint slides. You had the intro to the session, and we will touch on that. Here is my map that by 35 minutes past the hour, I'll be done talking at the very most. And we will go into small groups for 15 minutes, just kind of reflecting and talking about whatever showed up in that presentation for you and where it is taking you. We will come back and popcorn some thoughts and ideas, and then I'll hand it over to our host for the last, Lily, for the last 3 or 4 minutes, because she has announcements to make about the next speaker and the next session. So that's the framework for today. So I'll pull my PowerPoint slides on and we will get started right away. So that's the topic, the intersection of coaching, supervision, and movement ecology. And if you haven't encountered this model before, I will provide a brief introduction that will hopefully intrigue you enough for you to dig deeper into it. So I kind of summarized my approach already, but here are a few bullet points with some questions and directions for us, you know. So what is it that you do? What is it that I do? And I always think about it in terms of having to convince or talk to my young kids back then about what it was Dad was doing for a living, you know, because it wasn't one of those in the box kinds of titles that you could easily describe and they could, you know, Google and find out what it was. So what is it that you do? What's the context? So what's the real context of that work? You know, who are we in that space of the work that we do and in the people that we are in relationship with? What are the dynamics at work that you are aware of? And I think maybe even more importantly, the dynamics in the relationships that you are not aware of. And then we will look at 2 quick models and framework, and then we'll be done. I want to start us out with this quote by Wade Davis, because it is a good reminder for me. It was when I was growing up as a kid in a family of 5 kids. And I always, you know, reminded my 3 kids about this same notion that the world in which you were born is just one model of reality, that other cultures and other people are not failed attempts at being you. They are unique manifestations of the human spirit. And that immediately presents us with a more complex reality than what the world wants us to believe. You know, when we introduced ourselves, we were naming countries and regions of the world for the most part. And what gets missed in that is the unique human beings that we all are and the intersecting identities that define us, especially in terms of what gives us advantage or what doesn't. You know this model, and I'm sure you are very familiar with it. We are going to be touching on some dimensions of this model in the context of our session today. And I think I'll start with the 7th I itself, which is the wider context. There is a sense to which the client system is going to be invoked in our process, as well as the coach's process. A few other things will come in as we go, but we will be back to this model in some way, shape, or form. So just to remind us right off the bat here, that when I talk about who you are in relationship with or who we are interacting with and the things that dominate the space, part of what I was doing in my brief introduction today was bringing in different layers of my life. And as I think about the different layers of my life, I can say very directly that I have discovered that I have a lot of education and I have a lot of opportunities. I have rank, I have power in many, many circles, all the way from, you know, being a professor, owning my business and feeling like for the most part it is successful, being in an environment that I could raise my kids. It's like, yeah, lucky, feeling blessed in so many ways. At the same time, some of my intersecting identities, the primary one of which is the one that confronts people the moment they see me, is that I am a Black man. And I actually want to say that through the work that I have done in that unmasking process that I mentioned earlier, I am actually really proud of that identity. But the piece about that in my intersecting identities is that it is one of those that presents the most challenges and obstacles on my journey. I can't tell you that it is on a daily basis. I would say sometimes it follows me to my sleep and shows up in my dreams. That's how invasive it is. So in the small group, just to fast forward it, the small group conversation is going to invite you to take a look at your own intersecting identities. Just what are they? And in that 15-minute time frame, to quickly identify the ones that give you access and power and privileges and rank, and to see if you can find the ones that get in your way, that trip you, the ones that undermine your sense of self and the amazing human that you are, that is a gift to the planet. So that is what this is about. So the second paragraph here says, intersectionality identifies multiple factors of advantage and disadvantage. These intersecting and overlapping social identities may be both empowering and oppressing. When you were introducing yourself, some of you were kind and gracious enough to identify the territories that you are living in. That is a reminder to us about the sense of history, not just in this country that I live in, the United States, it's in Canada, it's literally everywhere. And as I say that, I can honestly put it out in the space that white supremacy has haunted my existence from the very day I took my first breath until this moment. In Nigeria, it showed up as colonization, where the predominant goal was to subjugate, marginalize, destroy the culture of the people, separate us, divide us, conquer us. And so that is a fact of my history, and my biggest dance is in that space of what do I do? Which part of that do I befriend? Which part of it do I keep standing up against, organizing against, and working my darndest until the day I take my last breath to do what? To help dismantle those systems. And this is not a polarized kind of situation. This is actually for the sake of all of us, rather than for the sake of one group against the other. So this is just to give you a sense for, the constructing of your intersecting identity. So I will keep going, and if you need any of these slides at some point, I can pull them back up. So here is the historical perspective of what I just said a little while ago, that all through history, if you dig out the documents and the records and the stories that are embedded in them, we have approached each other, and that's the other, whoever that other is, from these three perspectives: avoiding, converting, destroying. When we couldn't avoid, we tried to change the other person to become like us. And you've seen that. One of the sad experiences that will, I hope, haunt us until we come to peace with it by doing what needs to be done, not just individually, but as a global and as national systems, is what is still emerging around the boarding school experience. It's right in our face, it's right in my face, it's right in yours. I hope it never goes away, because we've not done the work that we need to do to not just heal from it, but to confront it honestly and with courage. We have been avoiding. Some nation states are not even talking about it, it's like it should go away. It was something in the past. So now onto movement ecology. Movement ecology, I stumbled into it not that long ago. It's something that has been put together by an institute called AYNI Institute, AYNI, AYNI Institute. And I find it to be really helpful because it is a change model. Actually, even better yet, it is 3 change models embedded in this simple framework. And the 3 change models that are embedded in it are personal transformation, changing dominant institutions, and alternative institutions. And what I did this morning before I had my shower was kind of like mapping it and going, where do I see coaching supervision in this? And believe it or not, I located coaching supervision in all 3 of them. So I am saying that to actually raise the bar as I explain what each one of these ones are, that if you are one of those supervisors that are playing in just one of these arenas, that you might want to begin to extend into all of these arenas because the world needs us in all of them. So personal transformation, think about it in terms of the incredible work that has been done in the world and continues to be done in the world, sometimes one human being at a time. One coaching supervision hour at a time. Priceless. This model says that the locus of transformation in this is the individual. And because it is the individual, I want us to just think briefly about the individual that is the supervisor and the individual that is the supervisee, or if it is in coaching, that is the client. So in the case of the individual that is the supervisor, I'm just throwing out questions here because we do not have time for discussion. How much do you, and have you come to peace with who you truly are? How much do you know that person? How much time, energy, how much money do you devote into ensuring that that instrument is always tuned, ready, healthy, grounded, healed, and transformed for the sake of those moments that we have the honor and privilege to be one-on-one or one with a group in the context of supervision. So we have just talked about how much do you know yourself. The other one then is, do you really know your client? Do you? I used to say to my professors, no, you don't know me. If you knew me, if you understood who I was, you would have helped me out more than you do. Do you know how they didn't help me out? They didn't help me out because every educational system that I have gone through, and I've gone through, God knows, maybe 20, or more than 20 years of structured learning in systems, I have had to now go home and translate everything into my context for it to make sense to me. Because it was not designed for me. The framework was not responsive to who I was, but I had to swallow that. And then I had to go home and go, so how does this make sense in the context of who I am, where I live, where I come from, and how I show up in the world? There was absolutely not one system that did the translation for me. So I am asking us again as supervisors, when these supervisors show up, have you done your own work? So that this translating and integrating is not something that they have to go home after supervision and begin to wonder, so how do I make sense? Because that person that just talked to me had no clue who I was. And I'm not talking about who they are in terms of race or ethnicity. I am talking about all the different levels and layers of identities that intersect with each one of them. Why do I say that? Because you might go, oh, I know Okokon, I have spent time finding out who he is. And so the next Black man comes that you supervise and you go, oh, you got it figured out. No, you don't. Because no two Black men, no two women, no two young people, no two gays or lesbians or bisexual people are the same. And so every one of these people becomes this moment of learning, growth, expansion. And I will add one more word into that, of even failing and recovering. Let yourself fail. Let yourself not know. Let yourself be willing to learn when you don't know, because you will never get to a point where you know everything about everyone that is in front of you or is in that space with you. I have never met one human being that has arrived in that space, no matter how knowledgeable or proficient they are in the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging space. So let go of it. This year, my resolution was to make mistakes, to fail, because if I don't, I have not stretched, I have not stepped further out of my comfort zone. So it was like, I want to make mistakes this year. I want to stretch myself beyond my comfort zone to the point where I don't know what I am saying. I make mistakes and even offend people so they can teach me, school me, support me, and help me grow. Otherwise, I'm going to stay in my safe space. And any one of us can stay in those safe spaces for as long as we want, and it doesn't get us there. So changing dominant institutions is another model. And you know some of the organizations, I'm sure, that are playing in this space. I said at the beginning that coaching supervision also does this. It doesn't also do personal transformation. It does the changing dominant institutions too. Why? Because when I am with my supervisee or with my client, it matters to me that the reality of the larger context of our world and all of what is unfolding, of the world and what is unfolding, of my world and what is unfolding, of my supervisor's world and what is unfolding, that all of those are taken into account in that interaction, in that encounter. I threw out a few words when I was introducing myself, like intergenerational trauma. I threw that out. It's there. It shows up. The pain, the hurt, the joys, the triumphs of not just the individual, but in the surrounding environment and community, which is what I said about I-7, the larger context, is present in this one-on-one close encounter that we are privileged to be part of all the time. So we have to be aware of that. We have to expand our awareness. We have to keep learning, and we have to keep inquiring and asking and inviting it into the conversation as part of what is needed for people to do what? To find themselves, to sing their own songs, to speak their own languages, to follow their own God that is not dictated by anyone else. All of that is in. The alternative ones are more kind of subversive in the way that they're often not funded, or supported as broadly as the dominant cultural institutional change models. They are not. And so if you think about alternative institutions, it would be things like, on my TV, St. Joe's pops up all the time, raising money to support families and kids that have childhood cancer so that nobody owes anything and nobody pays anything. That's an alternative institution. Greenpeace, Doctors Without Borders. I'm sure you know many other ones. I am suggesting that coaching plays in that space too, where somebody comes to see you for the purpose of supervision. They have no clue that the relationship can change their lives to the point that it changes the environments, whether it is their work environments, their communities, or relationships that they are part of. And so we don't say that. People ask me, what do you do? I tell them the technical aspects of it, but I have had people be healed in supervision. people be transformed in different ways. People be educated in it, but that's not what we do. But it happens because the field is that much richer when we let it manifest and unfold. So I'm going to skip over a few slides here, and I am going to honor what I said at the beginning. So what am I suggesting as we get to this point in our presentation? Let me find my chair adjustment here. It just went, maybe it was telling me it is time, as I listened to that, it is time to pause. Maybe it was, So I just want to summarize to you what I was putting out there. I was suggesting that the context of our work presents us with many different kinds of opportunities. I was also suggesting that the people that we are and the people that we interact with do not come to us showing up in one flavor or layers. I was also suggesting that because we have all these levels of intersecting identities, knowing one woman, one man, one Black person, one young person does not give you access to an entire group and community of people, and that we should keep staying with who is in front of us and supporting them in unfolding and discovering and expanding their identities as unique individuals. Because what? One size has never fit all. So that whole thing about one size fits all, even now, is still a lie. If you buy it and think it's going to fit everybody, it never does. And then I said within the framework of movement ecology, that there is one dimension that is about individual transformation, that is work that has been happening for thousands of years and will continue to happen. There is a lot that happens there. And that our role is to create the space or spaces that allow individuals to fully show up. And there is one piece of it that needs to be underlined, that unless we ourselves find ourselves, and I'm talking about finding ourselves at that level of peeling off the layers that have defined us since we were born, or even before we were born, because of the cultural context that we were born into. Unless we do that work, we will never have the breakthrough that is needed in the supervisor-supervisee context. And we talked about the dominant institutional change work that needs to be done, because although it is one-on-one, the real work is beyond the one-on-one. The real work is about the communities and the world that we live in and the issues that are existing in it, that are crippling some people and empowering other people. And so the invitation is for us to do what? Take a look at our own needs and our own situations so we can discover the intersecting identity dimensions that inform who we are, discover the ones that give us rank and power and access and privilege, and the ones that disempower us. And the last thing I want to share is kind of inviting you into a brief conversation with me right now. So I go hiking with my wife frequently. My question to you right now is, which two things do I never leave home without? You can tell me what you think it is. Which two things do I never leave home without?
Identity is one.
Why is that so? Why did that come up?
What is it, or why?
Why? Yeah, you mean you mentioned identity. Why do you think it is? Because you are right.
Well, I think we may not to your point, we are all discovering, right, every day. But in order to go out in the world, we have to identify some ways just to get out there. So some days we're really grounded and other days maybe not so much, but I don't think you just skip along without thinking about who you want to be out in the world.
I love the sense that you captured there. And in a more specific way, I have to have my driver's license with me. I never leave home without it. Why? It's not made up. I have had actual encounters that suggest that I never do. So I never. It's always with me. And my wife is familiar with it, and I would occasionally say, "Sweetie, did you have your license with you?" 9 out of 10 times she doesn't. I think 1 out of 10 she does it out of support for me because it doesn't affect her. So that's part of the privilege, that she enjoys in a relationship that I don't. I am going to honor my time commitment. So this is that moment to pause. So as you go into the small groups, I don't want to give you one question. Talk about anything you've heard that is bubbling to the surface for you. For 15 minutes, you will be in groups of maybe 4, I think we said. Lily, yeah. Just talk.
4 to 5.
And then, 4 to 5, talk and then come back in 15 minutes. But whatever, I'm not going to tell you what to talk about. So see you in 15 minutes. Welcome back. So I just want to thank all of you for holding the space for that first segment. The part I did not state at the beginning is that no matter how much I think I have grown, presenting to colleagues is always challenging, but I felt you holding the space for me. That's what makes the difference. So we have 6 minutes before I hand it over to Lily. And in that 6 minutes, I just want to invite the rest of us to please input your thoughts in the chat box. And for that time frame, as many people as can speak are welcome to. And I wanted to kind of respond to our time together and what you heard, what you talked about. If we can do that briefly, it will get more voices in. How is that? So whoever is ready, go for it. I see your hand up, Sharon.
Yes, I think it was, it offered me different lenses, and I thought to myself, I also don't ever leave home without my driver's license, but for a completely different reason. And so, as I said in the group, we can never believe that everyone's action comes from the same motivation or the same reason. So it was quite a wow. Okay, yes. So thank you for that.
And thank you for your response. And I'm sure you were waiting for the second thing. The second thing is my parents always told us you have to leave home with money. Literally, because there are times where you will have to either bail somebody or bail yourself out or get out of whatever the situation is. So those two things are still true. My ID and my credit card or debit card. Okay. So who else wants to share what your response is?
Well, I can share.
Please, Kimberly.
So what came up for me is I never leave without the appropriate clothing for whatever it is I'm going to meet. So that might be a hike or a ski or a work meeting or grocery shopping or whatever it might be. And then the group was beautiful in terms of looking at the metaphor of that and this notion of how we adapt to others, to the environment, to the world. And then we were looking at, and then how to do that without that adaptability becoming masks, like you were talking about in the beginning. So it's a very rich discussion looking at, and a couple other people had more physical things that we looked at the metaphors for, and then less physical things, but it was very revealing.
Thanks. I have, interestingly, the question I would ask is, who determined or determines what the appropriate clothing is for those different situations? Because some of those are imposed. I have a coaching client right now, and his struggle is the resistance, pushback that he gets in his work environment whenever he uses his cultural clothing to work. Because somebody lets him know it's the wrong one. See, so it's not as simple as you choosing, it's like society also tries to choose for us what is appropriate for what context. Who should shave? Beards are not allowed here. Tattoos are not allowed over there. You know, tennis shoes are not welcome. Oh, you didn't bring your tie. See, all of this stuff. But thank you for the expansion of that notion. I'm looking here. We have room for one more person if anyone wants to jump in. I see your hand up, Janet. Please go for it.
Thank you. I guess a question that came up for me was thinking about your change model and thinking about how those two things we never leave home without can participate in disruption of these systems. Or maybe it's just through awareness of what we're going into, you know, using Kimberly's metaphor of appropriate clothing. But so I'm wondering if you can say something about that, about how that consciousness or awareness can help us, you know, whether we're in a position of privilege or not. How do we take that with us?
Wow, it's like, how much time do we have? But that's actually a great one. So just to give an example, in the dominant institutional change dimension of that model, you know, that is where a group like Black Lives Matter is in there. And part of it is the like disruption, you know, the disruption in terms of holding up an experience or an experience that might be uncomfortable, but the goal is to do just that, you know, so that the system never feels like it's okay, you know, it's okay to do otherwise. So there has to be that edgy dimension to it. And when it isn't, like I would ask my friends, you know, how many of you ever went for any rally around George Floyd? Because that also gives me one indication, just one indication of what's the level of safety that I need, or when is fear getting in the way of what I need to do, or when are my peer group or circle friends, you know, kind of telling me, oh, don't go out there, you could lose your life, you know. So I think anytime you feel like your comfort dictates your action, that's the time to wonder with yourself about what is it that's going on here. You know, when I feel like I need to lock my car because of where I'm in right now, what's going on? Like, what's going on? Because it can be coming from a place of, you know, privilege. Yeah, I'm sorry that we do not have more time for this, you know, conversation. I am noting some comments in the chat. Please check in there. Lily, I'm handing over to you so you can get your word in before we go. But thanks everyone for being here. I know that some of your names are already familiar to me, that I know you are going to be presenting at the conference. So I will be seeing you there and maybe at the next session too. But thanks for being here. And it's been a pleasure meeting all of you.
Let's give Okokon a big hand.
Okay.
Thank you, my friend, for coming and honoring us. And as you know, many of you, that Okokon is one of our keynote speakers at the upcoming conference, and we have other speakers in the room. Put your hands up if you're a speaker at the conference. Great,
Hello,
thank
everyone.
you. It's very exciting to happen. So if you aren't signed up, please do sign up for our conference at the end of the month. Jean Elvire, where are you? Jean Elvire?
I'm just beside you on my screen.
Oh, you're way below on my screen. So Jean Elvire and Inga are starting a book club for the America's Coaching Supervision Network every last Monday of the month. So
Yeah.
next week at 9 a.m. Pacific time, we're starting with Robin Shohei's book, In Love with Supervision. Read the first 4 chapters and show up in the Zoom room. I just put it into chat. You don't have to
And
sign
you are
up.
all welcome.
Everybody's welcome to have the conversation. And then next meeting, March 21st, Robin Shohei will be our speaker. So 8 o'clock Pacific, same Zoom room. Please come and engage with him. He's also a very provocative speaker, and he will also be one of our keynotes at the conference. So with that, I wish everybody well. I know it's celebrations all over the place and days of marking certain events. So have a great day. Thank you. And thank you, Okokon.
You're welcome. Thanks, everyone. And bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.